What do you actually believe about yourself, about other people around you, about everything relating to the world outside your own head? Not just about whether you believe in a specific religion or vote for a certain political party because of their policies, but about the things that relate to that unnoticed driving force underneath every choice you make, every relationship you enter, every risk you take or avoid. Most people never examine them. That omission shapes everything about you and your choices. Here's the common assumption. Beliefs are things you choose, but that is not quite accurate, because your conscious self isn't always part of that decision. By the end of this video, you will understand not only how beliefs form beneath conscious awareness and quietly govern your behavior, but also about 2 specific ways to start loosening the ones that have been working against you. Most beliefs did not arrive through deliberate reasoning. They came in early, from the adults around you, from small incidents that your young mind assigned enormous significance to, from the groups you belonged to, from what happened when you took a risk and what happened when you did not. By the time you were old enough to reflect on them, many of your beliefs had already been sorting your experiences for years. Research beginning in the 1960s with patients suffering from depression highlighted something striking. Under the surface of many patients' distress was not attached primarily to traumatic events, but about interpretations, deeply held conclusions about themselves, the world, and the future. These interpretations were labeled core beliefs, and what distinguished them was their invisibility. They did not present themselves merely as beliefs, they presented themselves as facts. That is the first critical thing to understand about your beliefs. They do not feel like opinions, they feel like observations. When someone with a core belief that they are fundamentally inadequate makes a small mistake, they don't think, I have a belief that I'm inadequate and this mistake is confirming it. They think, see, that's just how I am. The belief happens as an automatic, unnoticed process. There is no space between the instigating person, place, or thing and the thought that you connect to yourself about that. So, why does the mind do this? Why does it build invisible structures and then defend them so fiercely? In part, the answer lies in how cognitively expensive it is to live without beliefs. Every moment of your experience is ambiguous. A friend does not reply to a message, a colleague is quiet in a meeting, a stranger glances at you in a certain way. Without beliefs filtering that ambiguity into something manageable, your mind would be paralyzed. Beliefs are cognitive shortcuts, the brain's way of compressing a chaotic world into something navigable. The problem is that the compression algorithm was largely written before you had much say in it. Something related to this insight was identified through research conducted in the 1950s. Cognitive dissonance. When new information conflicts with an existing belief, the mind experiences this as discomfort, and it is strongly motivated to resolve that discomfort. Usually not by updating the belief, but by discrediting the information. This is not a sign of low intelligence, it is a sign of how committed the mind is to its existing model of reality. People with strongly held beliefs tend to become more attached to them when presented with contradictory evidence, not less. The belief does not just describe your world, at some level it constitutes it. At the turn of the 20th century, it was argued that beliefs have a peculiar power. They alter the conditions of the very situations they describe. If you believe that people generally cannot be trusted, you treat strangers with suspicion. They respond to that suspicion, and you gather evidence for your belief, evidence you helped create. This is not self-deception in any simple sense. It is the way belief and behavior form a closed loop, each validating the other across time. Which brings the real difficulty into focus. You cannot simply decide to stop believing something by reasoning your way out of it. Past research showed that the emotional investment in a belief is often deeper than the intellectual one. You may see the argument clearly and still feel the old pull. That gap between understanding and feeling is where the real work happens. So, what does the real work look like? The first step is interrupting the assumption of fact. The cognitive behavioral approach begins here. When a thought arrives that feels like a direct observation, I always get this wrong, or they don't respect me, or I'm not the kind of person who does that. Treat it as a hypothesis rather than a conclusion. Ask yourself, what is the actual evidence for this? What evidence contradicts it? What would I think if someone I respected had this same thought about themselves? The aim is not to replace a negative belief with a positive one through force of will. It is to restore the sense that interpretation is possible, that the conclusion you reached is one conclusion among several. The second step is deliberate exposure to disconfirming experience. Beliefs are maintained in part by selective attention. If you believe you are socially awkward, you remember every interaction that confirms it and discount every one that does not. Changing a belief requires not just revising how you think about past evidence, but accumulating new evidence that the old framework cannot easily absorb. This means doing something your belief says you cannot do, or doing it differently than the belief predicts, and then paying careful attention to what actually happens. Not every experience will rewrite the belief, but over time, genuine disconfirming experience erodes the certainty that kept it in place. None of this is quick. Previous research has proved right that the mind protects its existing models with considerable force, but the protection is not absolute. Beliefs are not fixed facts about the world. They are working hypotheses, some inherited, some constructed under pressure, most arrived at before you had the tools to examine them properly. So, what do you really believe as concrete, immutable facts? Perhaps the more useful question is this: are you willing to find out about who you really are by investigating your unchallenged beliefs?